In my last video, I talked about controllers in Smash Bros., and yet there was a distinct lack of a certain popular controller for Smash Bros. And that was because at the time, I only had 2 GameCube controllers, but since then, I've gotten my hands on a few more controllers, including this one. This is the XYAB controller. Now I know what you're thinking. This looks like one of those many Chinese bootleg controllers that breaks after a few minutes, and yeah, it does look like that. However, I picked this one in particular because of a video I saw a few weeks ago talking about this controller. I'll link that video in the description. And while this is the only professional looking video that talks about the controller, let alone the only one that talks about it in general, there are 2 major points that weren't brought up in the video: analog and time. The 2 biggest complaints you'll hear about any sketchy, no-name brand GameCube controllers. We'll start with analog since that's easy to test. Now, first we're gonna go with the triggers. So I just do the trigger halfway and Mario still runs around. And then I push the trigger all the way down and Mario is locked into place, allowing me to aim everywhere instead of walking. Now, here's the stick sensitivity. So, it is analog, but you can see I'm having a little bit of difficulty just trying to make him tiptoe. I can get him to walk. That's pretty easy. So, it is analog, but here's the official controller. I just push a little bit and it's easy for him. It's easier to make him walk on the official controller. It's easier to make him tiptoe than it is with this controller. You push a little bit, just ever so slightly, and you might bump into full speed. So technically speaking, yeah, there's analog, but for the sticks, it's just, you gotta be, a lot more precise with it. So, well, still better than a lot of other controllers that don't have it. If we're being quite honest though, you're probably buying this for Smash Brothers, which, yeah, it's a lot easier to make your guy walk on Smash Brothers than it is on Mario Sunshine. So I wouldn't say that the analog is bad if you're just using it for Smash Brothers. It's just if you're using it for Mario Sunshine, it's very difficult. Just be, a little bit more careful. I mean, I'm always going full speed in Smash, but maybe I shouldn't be doing that. I don't know. At the very least, analog is there. Alright, so we've got analog. We're already doing better than most other bootleg controllers. Now we've got time. And what do I mean by time? Well, another common issue with some of these knockoff controllers is that you'll buy it, you'll try it out once, and then leave it untouched for a while. But then you pick it back up again, and suddenly the sticks are drifting despite it not being used ever. It just kind of killed itself over time. I've been testing this controller every day since I got it, which, to be fair, hasn't been that long. I only learned about this controller a few weeks ago. So what I'm going to do is say it's good for now. If for any reason it stops working, I'll put a pinned comment down below in the comments section saying it finally broke or it stopped working or something along the lines of that. If you're watching this video and it's been a few months, maybe even a few years since I've uploaded it, and there's still no pinned comment, just assume the controller is still working. I'd also like to mention that the cord is a foot shorter than the original, but that might not be a problem. In fact, I wouldn't say it's a problem if you're using the GameCube adapter. Nintendo's adapter has a 3-foot wire on the end of it, but I use the Mayflash adapter, which is 4 feet 9 inches. Last thing I want to talk about is the price. I got the grape-colored controller from Walmart.com for about $10, which is the cheapest I could find. They normally retail for $12.99 on both Walmart and their own website, but I'd stick with Walmart if I were you. They want you to make an account to buy stuff on their website. Also, avoid Amazon if you can. The prices are higher on there. Now, would I recommend this controller? Maybe. Depends on your circumstance. Here's what I mean. Good condition GameCube controllers are expensive. If you're trying to save money, you could either buy a busted GameCube controller and replace the stick box with one from a Wii Nunchuck. But then you gotta make sure the stick boxes are the same. Is it a T1 or a T2 or a T3? And that depends on how old both the GameCube controller and the Nunchuck are. Or you could go on eBay and buy either a Mad Catz or Pelican controller, or a GameStop controller, which is just the Pelican controller with the GameStop logo on it, but for some reason it's cheaper on eBay. Maybe people don't realize it's just a rebranded Pelican G3, much like how, until recently, I didn't know Pelican was the original name for PDP. A well-known brand, which is still around today making officially licensed controllers. What I'm trying to say is, this is probably your best bet right here. I've heard good things about the Pelican GameCube controllers, but it's not the controller I've had experience with. This is the Mad Catz Cubicon. There is also another controller called the Mad Catz Microcon. It looks pretty much like this, but it has the word Microcon on the handle here. And I believe there's also a wireless Mad Catz GameCube controller. Regardless, this is the GameCube controller that I had ever since I was a child, along with my original GameCube controller. And after all these years, these two controllers are still in peak perfect condition. Maybe I just took really good care of them as a kid. But yeah, this controller, just as good as this controller. I know Mad Catz has a bit of a reputation for making some very strange looking controllers. But regardless, quality of this is actually good. All the buttons still work. There's no drift on the sticks after all these years. Triggers are still good. And it even has a macro function. So here's how the macro feature works on this controller. You push this button, it lights up. This is how you set up the macro. You then push the M button, it starts flashing. Now you put in your button combo. So I'm going to do ABX, and then when I'm done, I push that button. Now here's the thing, it reads and plays the inputs really fast. So when I push this button, he's only going to do A and X, because if I try to do it, you know, Smash Brothers is, you know, you're doing one action and you do the other too fast. It's not going to play them all. This is really meant for fighting games. See, here's the thing. This macro works with the D-pad, the face buttons, and the Z button. So if I wanted to, I could press this and do like a quarter circle or a Shoryuken input, and it would do those actions in quick succession. But for Smash Brothers, you don't really do stuff like that. Also, it does not work with the analog sticks or the triggers. See, nothing happens. Now, does it work for the start button? No. So, when you push the macro, and you push the M, and you push start, it just lights up whenever you press it. So I guess the start button acts as a way to sort of erase your macro if it's annoying you. So that works, I guess. Like I said, the macro's not really made for Smash Brothers. It's made for traditional arcade fighting games, which, if you're buying this controller, you're probably buying it for Smash Brothers. So don't even worry about the macro button. I just thought, I'd explain it for anyone who was curious. But that's enough of the Mad Catz controller. Overall, would I say the XYAB controller is a good controller? I would say it's fine. Yeah, the analog stick is not as precise as a first-party or a third-party controller, but at least the analog is there, and at least the triggers are also analog, and the controller still works. This is a techno game controller. Don't buy these controllers. I used it once, it worked. I used it a second time, drifts like there's no tomorrow. This controller, yeah, it still works. But this is only the second video that's talked about this controller. I know nothing of this XYAB company. Maybe they're legit. I don't know. But here's what I will say. If you came up to me and you said, hey, I already own like 1 or 2 GameCube controllers. I want to buy 1 or 2 more, but I don't want to spend like 50 or $100 on a first-party controller. What should I buy? I would say go on eBay, look up either GameStop GameCube controller or Pelican GameCube controller. You can get them for like 10 or 12 bucks, around the same price of this thing, but they're officially licensed, so already you know it's gonna work because it's been approved. And it's Pelican, or nowadays they're known as PDP, a brand that you know. Same with Mad Catz, officially licensed. It's a brand you know it's gonna work. My only complaint with the Mad Catz controller is the ridges on the sides here are kind of weird, but the stick is just as good as the first party stick. The parts used inside are just as good. I have no clue. Sure, these parts are newer, but I have no clue what's in there. So I would say if you're able to get a GameStop or Pelican controller, buy one of those. If you can't, buy a Mad Catz controller. And if you can't get a Mad Catz controller for a decent price, then go for the XYAB controller. But that leads me to my final question. Should you buy a GameCube controller? And I will go over that in my next video. I hope you look forward to it.